But first to our exclusive story. Senior coalition figures are tonight accusing Penny Wong of dog whistling and creating a climate of fear for Jewish Australians with her provocative language against Israel. Both Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Paterson and Liberal Senator Dave Sharma are urging Penny Wong to tone down her rhetoric and to stop fanning the flames of anti-Semitism. It's their strongest comments yet. I'm going to show you them exclusively in just a moment. But it comes after Penny Wong compared the liberal democracy of Israel with evil dictatorships, Russia and China.
We expect Russia to abide by international law and end its illegal and full-scale war on Ukraine. We expect China to abide by international legal decisions in the South China Sea. We expect Israel to abide by international law.
That is a new low even for Penny Wong. In a disgraceful speech, she also went from pretending to care about anti-Semitism to very quickly returning to her favourite topic of criticising Israel. Well, in response to Penny Wong's speech, James Paterson told me today that it's clear the Albanese government has learned nothing from the terrorist attack at a Das synagogue last week. He said this, and I quote, "For the Foreign Minister to compare Israel, a friendly liberal democracy, to two authoritarian states is an outrageous slur." He said it continues Labor's campaign of vilification against the Jewish state and contributes to the climate of fear Jewish Australians are feeling right now. He said the Foreign Minister should tone down her attacks on Israel before it gets even worse. Now, Dave Sharma, who was Australia's former ambassador to Israel, he also urged Penny Wong to calm down her language, and he even accused her of dog whistling. He's on the show live tonight, but this is what he told me. He said, and I quote, "I think the government's actively seeking to delegitimise and discredit Israel, and the result is it's giving licence and encouragement to people who want to take matters into their own hands and target Jewish Australians." He said it's effectively like a dog whistle, where on the one hand they condemn anti-Semitism, but on the other hand they fuel the conditions which are giving rise to it. Now, those are extremely strong remarks. Dave Sharma saying that the Albanese government, and in particular Penny Wong, fueling the conditions that give rise to anti-Semitism. Effectively like a dog whistle, he says. And they're right. Penny Wong needs to stop demonising Israel because provocative accusations are, in my view, inflaming tensions and encouraging hatred towards Israel and thus Jews. But it seems she doesn't care about the impact her words are having on anti-Semitism. Albanese and Penny Wong are only emboldening the haters with their wrong and unjust criticism of Israel. Their moral confusion sends a green light to the aggressive pro-Hamas mob that's been targeting Jews. A synagogue has been firebombed, and Penny Wong and the others need to urgently tone down their language. They should actively try and calm down tensions. They could even try to demand that our hostages are freed, that the UN take action to help the Israeli women, currently sex slaves to terrorists in Gaza. They could also demand that Hamas lays down arms. I doubt the Foreign Minister is capable of such moral clarity. And it doesn't seem like the Prime Minister is either, because it took him 4.5 days to visit the Das synagogue in Melbourne after it was firebombed in the early hours of Friday morning. Tennis was more important. Whining and dining with Labor lobbyists was more important. But finally today, the Prime Minister bothered to turn up and visit the site of the terror attack. Albanese was met with, and he shouldn't have been surprised by this, with a hostile reaction from the local Orthodox Jewish community. One woman told him his words were cheap and late. Another asked why he'd played tennis instead of visiting earlier. There were also questions about whether he was pro-Palestinian. Now, When Albanese arrived and I watched this closely, instead of saying to the local community, like I did when I went there yesterday, I'm so sorry for what you've been through, this is such a tough time, or words to that effect, he said this in a jovial tone.
I went to my first bar mitzvah on Saturday.
What? I went to my first bar mitzvah on Saturday? Really? Do you want congratulations for that, Prime Minister? Mazel tov, Prime Minister. I mean, this was utterly tone deaf. The Adass community is shell-shocked, I can tell you that. The president of the synagogue told me he's been unable to properly function. One worshipper had tears, this is a grown man, tears rolling down his face when he surveyed the damage inside yesterday. I was there with him. But Albanese turns up and jokes that he's been to his first bar mitzvah. And in fact, I've confirmed today he was only at the bar mitzvah in the synagogue in Perth for literally 20 minutes. He wasn't invited, as his office keeps insisting. He asked if he could drop into the synagogue, a publicity effort. And likewise, his visit to Adass synagogue today was very quick. He came and left as soon as he could. He spent the bare minimum time there. No questions, of course, no interaction with the Jews who had legitimate questions for him about why he'd failed to support our community. But he was forced, when he went inside the synagogue, to confront the brutal reality of what his personal lack of action on anti-Semitism has led to. A destroyed place of worship. A Jewish community right around Australia reeling. And Australians, good-hearted Australians of all faiths, aghast at the Prime Minister's lack of moral clarity and his weakness. And still, his own senior ministers can't help but speak about Islamophobia. This was Ed Husic today, refusing to comment on anti-Semitism without mentioning Islamophobia in this absolutely extraordinary exchange with Kieran Gilbert.
Should the government have done more to stop anti-Semitism?
Well, I think we can...
Because every week you're seeing a protest in Melbourne. Hate symbols have been used at many of the protests. Is this a slippery slide that we're seeing this thing just get worse and worse?
I think we should always be on the lookout for things that are used to make people cower or fear or prevent them from being able to live their daily lives. So be it anti-Semitism or Islamophobia or anything else where people are singled out because of a particular attribute, we shouldn't be going there.
The government's been criticised for always saying anti-Semitism alongside Islamophobia. James Paterson says that's part of the problem, that you should just call out anti-Semitism for what it is because it's worse now than anything else.
Sorry, so should we turn a blind eye to Islamophobia? Is that what the coalition's saying? Because the coalition has frontbenchers who have said Islamophobia is not a problem, which is just ridiculous.
And this went on, and he tried to compare one incident some time ago to this terror attack, the firebombing of the synagogue. It was truly unbelievable that Ed Husic could continue to downplay the anti-Semitism crisis like this. And by the way, his comments came literally at the same time as Albanese was at the Adass synagogue that was firebombed. But this follows Chris Bowen just yesterday also speaking about Islamophobia.
He said that that Islamophobia shouldn't be mentioned in the same sentence as the Prime Minister has done. If James Paterson thinks there's no Islamophobia in Australia, he's wrong.
He didn't say that, though. He said that when something happens, it should be enough to just denounce anti-Semitism.
He went on to say that they're not at the same levels. Look, but the point of the matter is...
Hang on a minute, are you saying they are at the same levels? Because we've just seen a targeted attack on a synagogue.
I'm saying, Patricia, that both exist, and I'm saying that both can be called out.
Not even the Prime Minister can unequivocally condemn anti-Semitism as a major threat facing the nation right now, worse than Islamophobia. Have a look.
Is anti-Semitism a bigger problem than Islamophobia, a bigger threat?
Well, anti-Semitism is a major threat, and anti-Semitism has been on the rise.
I mean, they're all gaslighting the Jewish community. The Labor defence of their lack of action on anti-Semitism has today been to accuse Peter Dutton of playing politics.
Peter Dutton is that he has a political strategy which is a very divisive political strategy, and that's not leadership.
There is nothing that Peter Dutton won't seek to politicise and divide our community over.
Peter Dutton decided that it was more important to play partisan games.
Yet it's Labor that's playing politics here, continuing to focus on Islamophobia while synagogues burn. It's Labor that's playing politics, posturing to Muslim communities in marginal seats instead of governing for all Australia. And Labor is playing politics by their obsession with United Nations votes, ceasefires and criticising Israel. Well, this is all very wrong. They shouldn't put politics ahead of community safety. The Albanese government needs to focus on their own backyard, their actual job, instead of interfering in a foreign war. Well, if the Prime Minister and his team of pro-Palestinian activists actually cared about anti-Semitism, here's 6 things that I think they should do. Firstly, race hate laws. They need to arrest the perpetrators who are perpetuating violence and hatred, not keep arresting the innocent Jewish bystanders in case their very being is provocative to the haters. Secondly, we do need a national permit system for protests. We need to ban protests. If they intimidate the Jewish community, that means no protests outside synagogues or outside Jewish homes, because those protests merely attack people of Jewish faith. It's got nothing to do with the Middle East war. They need to stop provocative public criticism of Israel that fans the flames of anti-Semitism, as we've been speaking about. Words matter. Calm down the tensions. Number 4, they need to announce a judicial inquiry into anti-Semitism on university campuses. They voted this down when Julie and Lisa put it forward. Number 5, the Prime Minister should instruct law enforcement to use the full force of the law and the powers available to them to crack down on anti-Semitic incidents. And number 6, and this is on migration, they need to ensure that pro-Hamas anti-Semites aren't being flown into our country only to erode our Australian values. Well, that's my 6 things that I think the Albanese government needs to do right now that would make a tangible difference to our way of life. Pretty simple. None of them are complicated. They can be done today. Now, I thought there was an excellent column in The Australian today by columnist Claire Lehman, and she put it well when she said that the Albanese government has failed to move beyond platitudes, or the Prime Minister has failed to convey authority on an issue that requires leadership. And she writes that since the horrific Opera House rally, Albanese has followed the model of indifference shown by the New South Wales Police. He says anti-Semitism has no place in Australia, while anti-Israel protesters freely demonstrate in front of synagogues. He takes no responsibility for surging attacks on Jews while undermining the world's only Jewish state. And she makes the excellent point that many political and also corporate leaders who claim the moral high ground on other issues have been silent on anti-Semitism. She writes, rushing to champion Indigenous and LGBTQA+ issues, our left-leaning leaders fall mute when confronting violent hatred directed at Jewish Australians. She says the vicious hatred may come from a militant few, but it's the silent majority, particularly those in positions of power and influence, who let it spread. And that's why James Paterson and Dave Sharma are tonight urging the Foreign Minister to stop trying to discredit Israel, because this language is only giving licence to the Jew haters to continue their mission of intimidation and persecution.